Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I am Gemma Files. And this, of course, is No
No
Darkness,
darkness, but
but
ours.
ours.
Our last three podcasts explored folk horror in fiction and film. And in the second of them, you might remember our discussing the excellent work of George Popov. Through Rubicon Films, the production company he set up with writer and producer Jonathan Russell, Popov has so far directed the Sideworld series of documentaries and the feature films HEX and The Droving. Gemma and I admired all these films greatly, particularly The Droving, so we were delighted when not only George, but also Daniel Oldroyd, the lead actor in HEX and The Droving, agreed to chat to us about the films. Our apologies to Dan for some technical issues which may have left his voice sounding a bit distorted. Anyway, here are our guests, George Popov and Dan Oldroyd, in this special edition of No Darkness But Ours.
So, anyway, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to any of the guys have had a chance to listen to any previous editions of the podcast with.
I just did the previous one, the MR James one, and you both are fiercely intelligent, and I don't know how me and Dan will compete, but we'll give it a shot.
Very well. No,
not very well.
No. Well, neither of us have made films, so there's that.
He's quite clever for an actor, and I'm quite stupid for a director. So I think we're
kind of on the same level, kind of. I mean, we've just done one about folk horror, which we chatted for about 2 hours, and so it's even cutting out all my waffling, it broke down into about 40 to 45 minute sections. So the first one of those up, the droving gets discussed in the second one.
Yeah.
With one of those awkward conversations, because obviously we want to tell people how much we love this film without giving away too much, because obviously one of the things we really liked about it was I actually delayed watching it for a while because I think I can guess where this is going to go. He's going to go looking for his sister, and he's going to be like Wicker Man or something like that. And of course, it goes in a totally different direction. But
that's right.
Explaining why you love it without spoiling it for.
I mean, don't worry. That boat has sailed a long time. I've spoiled it myself a few times, but no, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Obviously.
Yeah.
The thing that occurred to me rewatching HEX and The Droving is that both of them obviously fall into that rubric, that category of folk horror, but particularly because they seem to be constructed around a certain type of landscape. Would you say that's true? That you find the landscape and shape the idea to it?
That's a very accurate assessment, because I think I was thinking about the landscape, and we had the landscape before we had all the points in both of these stories. If anything, the stories are inspired by the landscapes in some ways. I mean, we had some at different stages. It was different with HEX and then with The Droving, but it was absolutely the stories weren't in their final form and how they were going to go until we knew where we were. And particularly, I mean, just to one of the cleanest examples is the scene. Well, say a scene. It's kind of like a third of the film. The whole the big sequence with Dan and the hermit. In the in the hut in the bothy. We knew that was a point where that was gonna happen in the story. We knew he's gonna meet a character like this in a certain location, but origin was just some sort of cottage in the field. That's how it was written in the script.
Right.
So when we started looking around the Lake District in terms of what we have in terms of ideas, and I saw that pass, the Honesta Pass that we have in the film, that we have the car going through it, and I said well, that's going in, and I know what the shots are going to be, and I was like, whatever's happening, he has to go through there. I don't even care if he goes into the mountains. We need to go through there.
Just right through there.
Absolutely, because it just seemed like it was like this natural threshold of him kind of. I wanted with every kind of visual piece of the film for him to be almost going back in time in a way. Before the picture got dark again, and then we were coming back into the town in the end. So it needed to become more and more primordial as we're moving away. So, but originally what was conceived in the script is just kind of like a boring, plain when we saw those bothies, those huts for all the walkers and climbers out there, it's just like, well, it has to happen there because it's so isolated and there's nowhere where we can go. And because we knew that what the twist of the scene was and what we're going to reveal more and more about Martin, we wanted to initially people to think that we're putting him in danger more, but then after that.
Yeah, exactly.
It
really was one of those, no, you're locked up in here with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very Rorschach moment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
very Rorschach moment. It reminded me to some degree of, I mean, we knew that his sister had gone hiking with these people, and it reminded me of to some degree of the Appalachian Trail, which also has a series of little, not quite bothies, but little cottages here and there, or little huts here and there for people to sleep in, and very, very creepy pasta. I met this strange man on the Appalachian Trail.
Just down for a second, because you've thinking about the bothy scene, because that is, I mean, for me, that's the absolute heart of the film, because that's when you kind of your understanding of what you thought there's what you thought this was all about, and then there's what it's really about. And it's but it's quite long, complex scenes, a lot of shifts in turn. It's all, I mean, the whole film really has to be carried by the actor playing Martin, and
exactly
did an amazing job of that. I mean, was that, I can imagine that being quite a, I mean, how did you approach that scene? Because you've got to go through a lot of shifts and reveal a lot of different layers to the character.
God, it was a hard one. I think it was because we actually, I mean, we talked, me and George and Johnny I talked a lot about it. We talked a lot about the sort of the influences of the character, and I think a lot of the things that George always says to me is that we talk about certain films and like to watch those and see what the sort of colours that you can get from those different sort of characters. And I think for Martin, it was a couple of films like the Jake Gyllenhaal's character in Prisoners and Jason Clarke's character in Zero Dark 30, and even though they are very different characters, it's kind of sort of like big moment, and it was very, very difficult, long scene to film. I think it was just about kind of finding that sort of real menace, and I think that was the main sort of, for me anyway at that time, I think it was the main sort of crux of that scene, because throughout the film he's kind of building and building, and he kind of gets to this point, and this is kind of when he's at his most, you kind of don't, I think from watching it back, I think you kind of at this moment don't particularly like him because of the things that he's doing, even though the hermit is supposed to be this person who's, he thinks has killed his sister, and then it turns out that actually no, that's not the case. He's horrible to this helpless old man. And it was just kind of, I suppose, trying to be as monstrous and diabolical as possible, but without being too over the top with it, I guess, if that makes any sense.
The thing about the Jason Clarke character is that it's a job for him. It's a job, but then at a certain point you go, oh, is it a job or is it a vocation?
Yeah.
Is it sort of like, no, but this is the best job I've ever had.
Yeah.
I'm so good at it.
Yeah.
Although even Martin's feeling a bit of like, certainly at the end, there's a hint of remorse about it, about the things I did. Some of them didn't even know the answer that I was after, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've got to admit that at the very end, there was a moment when I thought it was going to go even darker than it did. And I actually thought instead of asking for his sister back, he was going to ask for Simon back to kill him, kill him all over again in a twisted way. I'm kind of glad it didn't go there.
Who knows? Maybe he did do that.
True.
Indeed.
Second on the wish list.
Maybe he changed his mind.
Exactly, but the devil never gives you what you want.
No.
No.
In terms of Hex, such a wonderfully ambitious place to start making a film. On the one hand, it's two guys in a landscape, with a woman going back and forth in the background, but on the other hand, it's like, Yeah, but it's also a field in England. So, yeah. What suggested it to you?
That should be the first film we make.
Yes. Yeah.
Insanity. Just
Okay.
naturally crazy. So that helped. And Johnny's not. He can't overpower me in a conversation. So Jonathan Russell, who we made him together. So I said, and then he agreed. So no. I think it's I like to counterbalance these points because we wanted to make a film that in some way is going to stick with people as the first thing you do.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be rough around the edges. It's going to have moments that you're still learning and you're still trying to do something. But if it was just that level of a story that was all about the characters and was all about the themes and everything, but it was in the room, then there's a lot of other people who have done that.
Yes.
And they're doing that and doing it to a very good degree. And also if it was just about a horror movie in the woods, that was also something that everybody was doing. So I have a passion towards both of these in a way, and we try to do something that's okay. The logistics will be difficult, but in a way, I think what was even more difficult was not that, but the fact that the film digs quite deep, and I think that's
yeah,
because I'm a sort of a big Tarkovsky and Malick fan. The people who can't stand just listening to birds and tree noises for half an hour, but probably tuned out, so they didn't get to the part where the film actually gets really good, and it gets quite deep, and Dan gets insanely good, and everything. So I wouldn't say it's a regret, because I learned a lot of kind of what we're all good at, by pushing the envelope of how artsy the film can be. And then I knew with the droving exactly what the right measurement of that was. At least I think I did. But I'm really glad that the Hex was that ambitious, because you can't really judge the boundaries of something until you sort of push them.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
And I'm really glad that we at least got to dig into some themes that I think were quite strong.
It does sort of involve the same kind of reversal to some degree. You're left in this place where it's like, is she a witch? Is she not a witch? Which is always inherent in a witchcraft, particularly a historical witchcraft narrative.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's in a lot of films, you have that in a lot of stories in literature as well, that shift of where obviously where the truth and the fact ends and when the fiction begins about who's a witch and who was claimed to be that. And there's big classics written about that stuff. And to me that was interesting, and I knew that was always going to be a part of the film. But what was even more important to me, and what the story, in my opinion, is really about, is not is she a witch, is she not, and who's right and who's wrong in the political thing, but who's good and who's evil, in this whole story.
Exactly.
And where does evil come from, and where does understanding or prejudice really come from? And it's all about people understanding each other, and in a very perverse way, it's a story about bonding of those two characters.
That's right.
So you get that understanding first, but then you never get to the point where they understand her, or So
well, it's sort of like the only way that they can bind themselves together is against an exterior threat, against a threat that's much bigger than politics. It's evil. It's pure evil.
Going back to Watchmen with the Rorschach, thing. That's Ozzy's good plan, isn't it? And he's very right. That's the only way how you can bring people together, is you have to pose some other external threat that we need to band against. Because otherwise we'll just keep on going against each other.
The Ozymandias gambit.
Dad's character had, where he was like, because I respect you, so I'll be merciful. I'll kill you quickly. That's kind of reminds me a little of there was a monologue the poet Jules Denby did about her cat, and about when she and her partner first moved into this house in Bradford. They had a little kitten, and the kids from the estate, kind of, because they thought they were punk rockers, basically glued a little bit of carpet to its head as a mohawk. And it was like, which was both horrible and kind of funny until they were tried to like remove until they removed it. But she was like saying they were trying to be friendly, but they were from the estate, so their friendly wasn't like anybody else's idea of friendly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, yeah, I like you, so I'll kill you quickly. Cheers. But there's a lot of kind of, I mean, in a lot of your films, there is this thing where you kind of set up one expectation and then change, and then, I mean, in HEX, and I don't know if it was intentional, but certainly from the visual cues at the beginning, my assumption was that Dan's character would be a roundhead, and William Young was the royalist because of how they were dressed. You know,
Yeah.
Young had the cape and the longer hair, and the sort of the helmet and the general murder of 1,000-yard stare thing that.
Oh, absolutely. No, and this is something that we actually found, like with talking a lot of people who are interested in the period and historians and reenactors and everybody, and they said like, well, those stereotypes weren't as clean cut as people present them to be. Like
Exactly.
fashion wasn't that huge of a distinguishing, thing. Like, in movies you imagine that everybody who's this way was dressed that way, and then like everybody's wearing their little uniform and their little haircut to symbolize their faction of where they come from. But it wasn't as clean as that. So we used this and with Thomas especially, I was thinking a lot of just Hitler Jugend, those kind of angelly boys, blonde with like that scene in Cabaret where the kid sings "Tomorrow Belongs to Me," genius moment. And you look at him and be like, oh yeah, he's gonna be like the wavy fairy, kind of royalist, but or just the good guy, kind of the moral center of the story. And again, in a kind of fucked up way, he is. In a lot of things that he values, he is, but then that just kind of reminds me a lot of how real evil is that you never see someone completely all-rounded evil about every single aspect of life,
Yes.
And mentioning, good old Adolf. I mean, he loved his animals and stuff, and like that was a big part of him. But not a huge fan of human beings.
No,
that's certainly true. Well, again, I think a civil war like that is kind of dictated by geography as well, and I saw it as being very much a guerrilla action section of the British Civil War.
Yeah.
The same way that in Ride with the Devil by Ang Lee, it's very difficult to make those kind of distinctions,
Yeah, no, absolutely, and like there was a lot of royalist supporters in the north, in particular, and it really just made a lot of sense with Dan there because he's such a great northern presence.
Yes, it's true.
How did you two first come to work together?
Well, I originally. It was through Susie Francis Cotton, who plays the witch, and she's the linchpin of everything that's good. It was through her, and Dan originally he auditioned for another film that was supposed to be our first film that we ever made, and that was even more ambitious and crazy. And so if anything, HEX was like the one that made sense, So
Jonathan must have kind of heaved a sigh of relief when you heard you were going for that one instead of the.
Well, no, because it was like with the other one. I remember like this is great, but it's like thinking, oh god, this is pretty. It is pretty big and it is pretty ambitious, and I think it probably would require a bit more of a budget to do it properly justice. But then when George came to me with HEX, I was like, no, this just gave me the treatment. I was like, sounds fantastic. Yeah, I'm all in. Let's play.
No, absolutely. I mean, the thing is because his audition for the other one was so good. Is that the next time we're just thinking about is like, well, we can't not have Dan play like one of the characters, because also I felt like I owed him, like, because it was that project was taking a long time, and he was seemed like such an important and good fit for the previous film. But even outside of that, it just seemed like the right thing to do, and the other film was just And then after that, like, you know, he kept on asking me, oh, George, when we're making it, you know, and I said, like, look, I mean, it's been a few years. I don't know. Like, I have to.
You're too old now.
But we'll do something else together, and that will ended up being the droving. So we never came back to that story because it's just like we outgrew it in a way.
Yeah.
But it was a great just an excuse to meet and work together.
Yeah. So you've been doing this Sideworlds project, and I really loved the first two films. I hear there's a third one coming. But I gotta ask, is there another fiction film hovering on the in the future?
Oh, there always is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like we haven't given up on that. So there you can't. You know, it's like the storytelling part of you like really wants to make all these narrative films. So no, Sideworld's been a great adventure and will continue to be, and it's good, kind of managing like a franchise, and like in 1 year we made 3 films, where before in 4 you make 2. You know, it's a different
exactly.
it's a different dynamic. I've never done documentaries before. I don't know the first thing about them aside from watching them, and that was interesting to tackle. And if anything, that was what made interesting Sideworld to me. Not from what I've heard to other people as well, is because I thought of them as as narrative films. I was like, I have to put like the same amount of atmosphere, and the music has to be right, and everything has to, the stories have to be interesting. But it still came from the same passion for storytelling that it came from HEX and the Droving, because those were little folklore stories and horror stories and paranormal things and unsolved mysteries and all of that are very closely related and in any way inspired, kind of quote unquote our own folklore that we made up with HEX and the Droving. And you, out of all of them, you can make a film, but you would need 50,000 lifetimes to be able to tell all these stories. So you can't, and not all of them are probably worthy of 90 minutes. So that's why we started grouping them by theme and making this series. So we're nowhere near close stopping with Sideworld, and we're quite in the thick of it right now. And there's all the things that we're building. And the last one you said, the third one, Sideworld, Damnation Village, which is about haunted villages and all that.
Nice.
We have 3 great sections there. It's going to be coming out now around Halloween, and that's going to be great. But in the background, all the notebooks with all the narrative films, they're getting filled as well. I kind of sometimes I cheat on Sideworld with those, and so there is a lot of there's stuff coming in, and there might be in a case in which those 2 universes might also crisscross in some way. So but we'll see. But
I was thinking that with a project like that, it allows you to scout a bunch of potential places to root new ideas.
Oh yeah, I mean you saw like in Haunted Forests or in Terrors of the Sea, saw that there is quite a few places, and it just gave me a great excuse to travel around England and the UK and just find even more places and stories. And I just love seeing all these things from a more of an outsider view, and kind of, because that's how I treated the HEX and the Lake District as well. Like it was a huge gift to me. Like a lot of people go with like you write what you know, and it comes from you and from your own experience, and I think the 2 of you talked about it in the previous podcast as well. To me, that's always been more difficult. I like to be like a chameleon that comes from the outside, infiltrates, and starts to pretend that, it's like, that's how I get it. Because I start seeing, when you've grown up around the place and you start, you might walk. If you grew up next to Notre Dame de Paris, it's just a church next door, right? You don't really appreciate it. And I mean, I know when I had friends come and visit in on my street in Bulgaria when I'm born and everything, and they'll stay and they'll just look at like a balcony or something. It's like, what are you doing? We're going to get some bread. Like, George, this is George, this is incredible. It's like, really, is it? So me seeing the Lake District for the first time is just it's like in a way like you appreciate like an impressionist painter, because it's like the time of day. What time of year did you see it for the first time? What was that first expression that you got from that? and gives you a certain feeling that it's just not the same if something that you revisit over and over again, or if it's quite a lot instilled in your culture. There's baggage.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
absolutely.
You've I was going to say, because you're from Bulgaria originally, but all the films you've made, the fiction and the documentary ones, are very, very rooted in and have this affinity with not only the landscape of the UK, but it's it's folklore, it's past, it's mythology, so which is kind of a obviously I could totally get what you're saying about when you're coming in from kind of outside, you get that perspective on an area that somebody who's grown up with it and familiar with it doesn't have. But where does that particular affinity for British English folklore come from for you?
From childhood, really. I mean, I grew up a family of artists. So my grandfather, he was a theater director. My mother, an actress. My dad's a painter. So there's a lot of combinations of that. So my granddad did a lot of Shakespeare, especially Shakespeare comedies. So like there's a lot of English stuff coming from there, and then from my dad on the visual side, and
the illustrations for the Sideworld.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yes, and that's why he was an easy choice for that, because he used to do illustrations for like old books around that time, but is that mixture again? I like mixing things, and it's like a lot of influences from history. I love the history as well. That's where kind of the Civil War thing comes from, and it's not just for Britain. I have the same interest in a lot of other countries, but it was, you have to take them one at a time, first of all, and then you're always going to have some places you have just a little bit more affinity towards, and especially if you spend a lot of time and friends and our companies here, and we made the films here, so the Britishness is slowly taking over me, So,
you're slowly being converted.
Yeah, it's like I infiltrated, and now I'm starting to forget, which is even better, because then at some point I can go back in Bulgaria and then have the same outsider film, be like, oh, what folklore is this, and then do a film there. But I guess it's a lot of stuff, and but no, put me in like Ohio or something, I'm gonna do the same.
I was reminded a little bit of Peter Strickland, because his first film was kind of like, here's a British director making his first film. What are you going to do, Peter? I'm going to go and make a revenge thriller set in Transylvania and film it in Hungarian.
Yep.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
No. Me too. I'm very interested in what people immediately see, and especially if it's meant to be as an impressionistic view, rather than I understand better than everybody who lives here, with a wagging finger. I think that will probably not work.
Yeah,
that might lead to a real life Wicker Man type scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really hopeful that all these haunted villages now that they're gonna watch, I hope the people of like Pressbury or something don't end up, skewering me or something.
Flood of people rushing in, going, "Where are the ghosts? Where the haunted stuff?"
Like, you already told the story about my grandfather so I'm careful.
Can I assume whatever fiction film you do next will be built around Dan?
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, there is. I can't confirm or deny anything.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I'll just hope. I'm joking.
I've got to say that, because
it's always nice to have somebody who's like front and center.
Oh no, absolutely. No, it's there's no way. Why would you not use your best assets? Like it's
exactly
stupid.
Exactly.
You both, because both the characters you play for George, both Richard and Hex and Martin and the Droving, they're quite driven, single-minded sort of characters. Is that like you in real life, or is there any particular reason George keeps casting you as these sorts of fairly figures?
No, I don't think that's like me. I'm nothing like. Well, especially like nothing like Martin. I tell you that.
Not at all.
But yeah, I don't really know. Like, I think a lot of characters that I would like normally I get cast as, like the kind of goofy sort of kind of quiet, quirky, funny-looking dude with big teeth. So yeah, it's weird. Like I can do the sort of evil menace thing, but it's not like most people would kind of pigeonhole me in, I don't think. So it's quite nice when, especially when I got with Richard, it was very much, I thought it was very much against type for me. And I think George thought that as well. I thought, yeah, this isn't exactly what Dan's like, but I think this we could make this work. Especially considering that it is very different to, well, Thomas was very different to Richard, so Will in a ways were quite similar. But yeah, no.
Definitely, and no, that's quite true. And I think originally you thought that when you read the script, you're like, oh, you mean Thomas, right?
Yeah,
and
Thomas
I'm like,
is me. Surely that's for me.
Like, no, I mean the badass guy.
I'm that wimpy angelic guy.
yeah, exactly. I was like, no. Well, because the thing is, it's like, I don't like casting for like what the person is, and it's, I mean, for other people's films that works very, very well. People who probably know how to, do things better, but because those character twists and turns that we're talking about and really going deep into a character, to me, I know it's going to be a much easier process to get the really complex shit out of the way, which means I cast for when the person's gonna end up being, rather than what was, because I can really help in making someone look more menacing or really bad, or I can write a really horrible line, that's gonna make them feel like they're an absolute dick.
Let's build towards that.
Well, what I can't do is what Dan is exceptionally good at, is really just give you a window into the soul of that person. And Richard, for example, because he was, I guess, he's quite a complex character, but it's a bit more easy to kind of for us to understand the magic trick there than with Martin. Is the fact that at the end of the day he's a quite pure human being. Right, and all of that slightly goofy, slightly quirky, slightly just really nice good guy nature that the Dan possesses. You want to see some of that in Richard by the end, because that will be so difficult to come through with everything we've seen before that. And if it's someone who's already quite like and just very much the person that Richard embodies as a profession, as a soldier, and as a belief that he has, then you really have to break all of that and then act on top of that to be able to show this. So that just made the whole process easier, and in my own twisted way, I think that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, you kind of, where was with Martin, you kind of have a lot more sympathy, even when he's quite ruthless, like with the guys in the masks and stuff. You kind of think, well, these are a bunch of arseholes who are going around beating people up. They're looking for someone to beat up. He's just basically laid the trap for them. And if they have done something to his sister, they basically thoroughly deserve to have their retinas burnt out, or certainly to be beaten up. So you're kind of with him to a quite very large extent right up until the scene of the bothy, and then you start to realise this how dark a character he is.
We kind of did the opposite trick with Martin, is because you just see Dan, it's like, hey Dan, just be a nice guy, and then we start peel back, because at this point, we knew each other and we've done HEX, and we kind of were starting to really dig deeper there, and me and Johnny just went ham on the script. And at some point, I remember there was, I think it was either the bothy scene or something else. I just stopped. I was like, dude, what are we doing? No one can play this guy. Like, this is no one. This is unactable. Like, we need Daniel Day-Lewis, not Daniel Oldroyd.
No.
But then I just knew that we'll do it, and he did it better than any Lewises or any.
Oh, I mean, the line, the bothy scene is just fantastic on so many. I mean, there are a couple of lines of that which there is the sort of, I don't hike, I don't give a shit about tradition.
Oh yeah, I love that line.
Yeah,
that's all Jonathan, I have to say. Yeah.
That is
it's brilliant.
Okay, verse.
It's funny because both of them have this sort of trace of a Western in them, in the setup of both films, and in particularly with The Droving, there's this real soupçon de deserves got nothing to do with it, sort of hovering in the background. Yeah. So
I'm a big Western fan. I like, I like simple plots because they give me a chance to go deeper somewhere else.
Yes.
That it's not, I mean, I like really kind of like heady, complexy, plotty, Nolan-y movies as well.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it is like when we're trying to really go deeper into a character, I'd be like, like the whole film is like this person goes from left to right and then they go right to left, like that's the plot, at the end of the day. But then that just gives you a chance to do everything else. In
Yeah,
between.
definitely.
Yeah.
Something I was going to ask is, in terms of The Droving, did you, to some degree, construct it around The Droving itself, around the like you heard about this thing that happens somewhere, and went, this would be a perfect backdrop for a film?
Yeah, well, The Droving was one of the first elements because I remember we had a little. We had a few times where do you remember when HEX came out and you came around to the house and we all watched it, and Dan, if you remember.
Oh
yeah, and then did we watch that also, that terrible film that was amazing?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Bone Hunter. Yeah, that's
horrible, but brilliant, amazing.
Anyway, so we would like watch bad films as well. Anyway, so as part of our little celebration for HEX coming up, we went, where all the crew is, and Dan came, and at some point we went to the Lake District.
Yeah.
And there was they had a Christmas Lantern Festival that was happening in November, but that was in Ambleside. And then I remember then Jonathan told me, well, do you know, like actually in Penrith they have one where it's called The Droving, and it's a bit more horror, it's not as Christmas. Like, oh, that's cool, because I was walking around the Ambleside one and I just saw how great the because I love verticality in films, because it gives you, like, you don't just have like a simple plane of how to shoot things. And I saw all these processions going on, and I said, like, oh man, I can just imagine the Thriller, someone being chased around, and it's like, we have to do something here. And that was it. That we'd never thought about that again until much later, when we looked into The Droving, and kind of all of these elements came together. And we actually even went to Ambleside, a very stressful day of shooting, which is not going to differentiate it, but from any of the other days of shooting, where we because The Droving has some scenes also there, so it's kind of like jumbled from a few different sets. So we absolutely use that as a bit of a backdrop. But I mean, aside from the animal mass and the people and that great backdrop, all the merchant stuff and everything, that's just our imagination, really.
I was going to ask about the Merchant of Souls, if that was an actual folk tale or something that you'd invented to kind of get the thing together. But
it is an invention. I mean, obviously it's inspired by like every character ever, when you really think about it. You have a lot of Satan-y stuff in there. I mean, obviously you have a lot of a big underworld merchant vibe,
Yeah.
You have a little bit of like the guy in Resident Evil 4 with the big coat, and that says like, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And also people who come to Cheltenham for the races. That's where the outfit came from. I just said I want him to look like that, and Johnny said, I think that's a pretty good idea.
I've got to say, I loved Alexander King's performance. I guess one of those ones, like, struck me as well about Susie Garton in HEX, particularly, is that you've got these small these performances which only have, they've got like one scene really.
Yeah.
But that scene is so crucial, and so much hangs upon it. I mean, we're hoping to do a follow-up interview with Susie. I was trying to get hold of her in time for this, but couldn't. And having five people, I would be. Sounds getting left out of it, as it stands. But
it's hard enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we might try and do a follow up with Susie at some point. But with the merchant, I mean, what struck me, I mean, he seems so kind and understanding, right until that last line, when you can see his face kind of, all his muscles kind of face kind of twitching. What if there was something I could do about that? Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real. It works because it really references all those moments where Christianity intersects with something that came
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So he reminded me a lot of fairy tales, like literally tales of the Fae,
Yeah.
but also where those tales tend to cross over with Christian
Absolutely.
Satanist iconography. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of Greek mythology in there as well. I mean,
Yes.
me and Jonathan, I was talking to him about a lot of River Styx stuff. That's why it kind of starts on a jetty at the beginning, and you have that's why the cave and there was a lot that it seemed like an entrance to the underworld, because at the end of the day, the deal is that he's gonna bring like dead people back. It's not necessarily you shouldn't be thinking about him as a necessarily an evil character, more than he just thinks about death in a different way. Now, obviously, for our understanding, he's very evil, but in a way, next to Martin as well, who's very human,
Sure.
very human type of evil, and again understandable. And I mean, it's funny how we have a literal serial killer in there, and people put him in like number 4 or 3 somewhere at the list of the most evil characters in the Droving, which is quite funny.
Because we can all understand how how if we lost the person we cared most, how far would you go to get them back? It's I mean, Martin does. I mean, that's how Martin kind of goads him into finally showing his hand, isn't it? And he sort of says the hardest thing to accept is that person will, no matter what you do, that person will always be dead.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
It's a nerve, because if Martin's right, then Simon's already killed 2 people for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. It's always that. The sacrifice worth what you have to give up for it?
Yeah, and the interesting thing on that is that's actually originally Simon was supposed to be a bit more of a stereotypical kind of looking serial killer guy, and it was gonna be Alexander King. Like, we cast him for Simon initially, because we imagined that he's gonna be a great foil to Martin. The only few people that it can be, but then when we saw Bobby Robertson as well, we saw that, like, well, he's not he's not the main antagonist in that way.
Yeah.
And someone like that, like Bobby's so lovable, as Dan, and he's so like relatable from that point of view, because you can imagine him doing like just stupid things out of love, but at the same time, someone who, like, there is a real human emotion under all the evil acts that he's committing. And Alex was meant, because like the merchant is the only character that can beat Martin in his own game.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult to believe, since we've made sure that we show Martin how good at his game is throughout the film. Alex is the only one who could have come close, and that's why we kind of ended up switching the roles around.
Well, the worst thing I think in both movies is that they end in a place of thinking that you're doing bad things for a good reason.
I think I'm just like deathly scared of that every time I do anything. I'm like, is it like I think it's a big part of every time you're trying to think in a kind of a big scale way and see what comes in the end. So both films are
It's the human condition.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good question for you there. I mean, because like I said, Martin is as a character, he's like in every scene, almost every shot. So it's a huge burden performance-wise to carry on your shoulders. But in I can imagine in terms of just the actual shoot for the Droving, because I remember there's a story about Richard Burbage, which may be true or apocryphal, because obviously he originated a lot of Shakespeare's roles, including Richard III. And one of the things that if you've read, I'm coming across in Year of the King by Anthony Sher, which is always a good read for actors. My acting days are long behind me, but there was a bit about how one of the things that marks Richard III out as an earlier play for Shakespeare is that he doesn't give Richard a break. He has no time. There's like Macbeth has the scene when Malcolm and Macduff are in England, where the guy playing Macbeth can basically go backstage and put his feet up for 10 minutes before coming back into the next bit of Sturm und Drang. Whereas Richard's just on stage throughout, and there is a story that Burbage actually said to Shakespeare afterwards, "If you ever do that to me again, I'll bloody kill you." True or not, we are not sure, but at least obviously you weren't having to be on stage non-stop, but it's you having to carry this whole thing. So I can imagine the film shoot being quite an arduous one for you in many ways, physically and emotionally.
Yeah. It was. I wouldn't change it for the world. But it was very difficult. It was more difficult than doing HEX, definitely, because I mean there was definitely times where it would just be Will who was being shot and I wasn't there. I could be sat off camera, but like with this, it was pretty much. I'm pretty much on every page, so it was really rewarding in that sense. It's like, oh god, this might be the only time in my life where I am, the lead. I'm on every page. I need to be like here, like all the time. But yeah,
spoilers, it's not.
Yeah. Some scenes are definitely harder than others.
Oh, sorry about that. That's here.
It could have been outside my house as well. I'm trying to think. Like probably the hardest scene to shoot was. The bothy scene was really difficult, but the fight scene in the car park was difficult, and I think mainly because it was just so cold.
Yeah.
It was cold.
Uncharacteristically so.
Yeah. But I think that was, just filming in November in the north of England. Emotionally, it was pretty draining, especially because there were certain scenes that we did where I definitely felt like, oh yeah, I've done that well. I'm happy with that. I can sleep at night. And then the other scenes where we did it, I'm like, fuck, I wish I could do that again. And we do it again now, and we can't do it again. All right, no worries. That's fine. That kind of thing. But then, like looking back, thinking, oh yeah, maybe I'm being a bit. There was definitely, certain scenes. Even now, when I look back and I think, no, there's probably things I could have done better. But I think, in hindsight, you're probably always gonna think that, but that might not be true. I might think, no, you're just being stupid there.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah. So I think the Droving, looking back. Actually going through the Droving, they were really interesting to film just because of the fact that obviously there's not a lot of talking in those moments. It's just a case of like running and like being surrounded by people who didn't know that this was going to be for a film. That was really great.
That must have been fun filming the actual scenes.
Yeah.
Weaving in and out of the festival itself.
We had like kind of 4 different teams with camera, everybody with a camera, just because knowing it's like, well, if we don't get it now, we have to wait a year. So it's like, it's not really, and that's what that's why the Ambleside one was like our contingency plan is like make sure that they're not going to have any ammo mass, but if we need just literally more people's butts on screen, that's what we can do that. But that was difficult, and you were great, Dan. I mean, that was just mainly you and Harry or DP. Most of that scene you were running with him.
Because Bobby wasn't there in the Penrith one. Bobby wasn't really there for the first. I remember for the first bit we did, because I think that was like right at the beginning of the Droving. I don't remember Bobby being there at that point. But then when we got to the bit more in the town centre, I remember Bobby being there.
Absolutely. Because we had a few chances of. Well, actually, we got a lot of interesting shots from just the kind of the Droving rehearsal before they even did it. Like all the fire stuff that was then, so that worked out really well. But yeah, there was a lot of like adapting and just trying to improvise on the spot. But in any way, sometimes these are more enjoyable because you're just reacting and it's so natural. Like we don't think about it. It's there's nothing to do wrong because you're just trying to get as much footage as possible and then put it together. And I always knew that scene will be like this from a script point of view. so that's why everything else around it was so structured that when you're like, well, we've kind of know that wherever we begin and wherever we end, like if we have the beginning and the ending in between, we're gonna have something, and I hope we did, but even if we had all the money in the world, you just cannot recreate that unless you're like literally James Bond money or something.
You've got that kind of cash.
Yeah, Hollywood cash.
We'd all like that kind of cash. Couple more questions. Because you've made pretty much all your whole oeuvre now. Oeuvre, I'm never sure how to pronounce that bloody word. All your work available. What Gemma said, available on YouTube for free, basically. So, was there any particular reasoning behind that, or?
Oh, I mean, we have a distributor that kind of makes all these decisions. So they're in LA, so they know how long it's best for a film to be on what stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it is because both HEX and the Drobing, they've been out for a while, and it's good to just have them available for more people. And if you don't mind watching a ton of ads, or if you have if you're one of the 3 people that actually have YouTube Premium, you can actually watch them without any ads, and it's great. So yeah, I mean they're on multi-channel networks. They're on multiple channels on YouTube. So yeah, they're available to be watched. But yeah, they're on so many platforms that even if you don't want to watch them on YouTube, you should be able to get them in any other way or fashion. But yeah, I think that's a lot of how the viewing is going. Because not everybody can how many platforms that you can subscribe to realistically at some point. Are you gonna have literally everything? And people cut their cable because it was cheaper, and now you have to pay more just to watch everything that you want to watch on all these different platforms. So I think
buying every bloody thing in sight up.
Yeah, things will gonna get consolidated soon, but
we're living in a golden age of access in some ways, but and also in terms of content being produced in some ways, but something is always going to slip between the cracks.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot more. It's funny because back in the day, it was so difficult to make a film.
Yeah.
But if you made a film, even if it was literal dog shit, you will get it. People will watch it, because you don't have much of a choice, and they'll buy your DVD, and you're gonna make a lot of money, and a lot of people are gonna watch it. Nowadays, anyone can make a film, and anyone can also kind of made it a lot of people can make it also somewhat good. But then how are you gonna plow through all of that sea of product that's out there? That's a lot more difficult to do
out there. That's kind of whenever I've got Shudder, and when you scroll through it and you see all these movies, and you're there thinking how you can't even, you're not even sure how you're supposed to. This could be great, so it could just be there. How can you tell? It can be very difficult to. Hopefully, a good trailer. I think that was, as I said, with the Droving. My initial thought was, I thought the premise I could predict what was going to happen. But I watched the trailer, and it was interesting enough for me to think, I want to see this. I'm obviously very, very, very glad we did. I pretty much evangelized about it.
Well, thank you very much. And I think on the same topic, I want to thank you, and I want to thank quite a lot of people like that, because the reason why people keep talking about the drawing keeps being brought up is because there's so many there is just a group of people who are really big fans of it, and maybe we haven't hit the mass audience around the world yet, and I don't know if that will ever happen, but in terms of some circles, there's just some people can't seem to shut up about it, which it's very humbling, very nice.
Good.
and it really helps films like that, because it seems like it has longevity, and that's at the end of the day what matters. And even I think it was a year or two ago now, with COVID, all the years it seemed like I say a year or two, but maybe 4.
Yep.
But no, I mean I think it was a year after the Droving came out, and it was a book came out from quite a big publisher, Faber, I think, here in the UK, and it was about the history of British film and television, and he had a section on the folk horror, and it had all the big hitters, have your Wicker Man and your Blood on Satan's Claw and all that kind of stuff, and then it ended on the Droving.
Wow.
That was the last one in the modern section, talking about, and it was very well written, and there was a great stuff about Dan and Martin as a character, and I'm going like, well, look, for people like us, and that means a lot, and especially for me, who I'm not even from here, to be part of sort of the culture of a country, to have added something. That's very nice, and a lot of thanks to everybody who made that kind of knowledge possible.
Perfect.
It's one of the most useful things podcasters or people like us can hopefully do, which is to help hopefully give audiences some idea of how to, as you say, wade through all this content.
No, I mean, me as a consumer, I'm finding it now like that I need that because it's great. It was great at the beginning when you said like, I can watch everything I want to watch, and then but then when all the new stuff comes around, it's like, oh, I miss when I had to watch something. Right,
what do I actually want to watch out of all?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where proselytization helps, I think, when you're passionate about something. Absolutely. You're not talking it up because your friends are in it or because you had some investment in it. You're talking it up because you saw it, you stumbled on it, and it really meant something to you. So. Yeah,
no, and we kind of deal in different genres that do have a very kind of like strong religious audience, that really push it forward, and that's really nice, especially when we don't like Hex and the Droving. Yes, I guess they're folk horror films, but they fall into so many different little brackets. So it's really nice to see that people that even are kind of hardcore, either horror fans or folklore fans or history fans or whatever, or just the thriller, they do seem to champion as part of their own thing, but still as a combination of all of them, because
I know Ramsey Campbell was very impressed with the Droving. I live not far from him, so it was actually at his new book launch last night, and I'd previously recommended it to him, and he had watched it, and they both so it was a really interesting and intelligent film. So
no, that's great, and again, thank you very much for spreading the word, and that's what films like that need, and that's what every artist needs, and that's why I try to do that with everybody who does anything sort of interesting and weird as part of our thing, even if it's artwork or the score or anyone else. And it's just that's what film is, and that's why I want it to be in film, because it's a combination of all these arts that we have, and you can put it all in, and then you can always and I try that there's at least a moment in the film that highlights one particular section of that art, the cinematography or the actor or the music, or like everybody should have their little moment, and that's quite important. So no, it's nice to hear all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give some use. So I think in closing, the questions to sort of be asking, what's next? What are each of you guys doing next or working on at the moment? I know Sideworld 3, the third Sideworld film is out imminently, but are you working on anything at the present time?
So at the moment is because it was a crazy year with 3 Sideworlds in literally one in 12 months.
Yeah.
So we haven't. I mean, we've been promoting them, but we haven't had like much chance to really push the overall brand and really make it. I mean, it has a great traction, but I think we can do even better just making it known and people following it. And there's a lot of, it's quite a lot of development there that we're gonna put a lot of time into, and then planning sort of the next chapter of what are the next kind of 3 Sideworld films gonna be, and we're probably gonna go immediately into that after probably a bit of a break. But at the same time, just before just before we start, even I was taking some notes on things that can potentially be the next feature film, but I don't want to say which one it will be, because every time I say it's going to be that film, it ends up not being that film, and we make a different thing instead, as we've now said multiple times.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, because you never know. So it will be one of like three that comes to my mind. It just ends up being in how things align, but yeah, we'll be making something soon. But at the moment, it's all the Sideworld stuff.
Okay.
So I mean, as and when you have something kind of on the go and ready to come out, then we'd love to obviously have you back.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much.
And thank you very much for doing this.
And
my pleasure.
Have you got anything what have you got? Anything in the pipeline at the moment?
Actually, I kind of after the whole COVID thing, my life it was a bit of upheaval. So I've kind of taken a back seat from acting, not forever, just for a little bit, because me and my partner moved from London up north and got our own house, and just got a new job, just tried to get by for the time being until I figure out when I will try and get back into the acting. Just needed a bit to clear my head from it for a while.
Yeah.
Definitely delve back into it, I think, hopefully in the next 12 months or something, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll definitely, again,
we're not going to let him like delve into anything else for too long. What was it? So it was not a line from Boogie Nights that he was comparing him losing his manhood to like Michelangelo losing his like chisel or something like that. It's like I can't lose my Dan for too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I sincerely hope there's another collaboration with you guys, between the two you guys again soon, because it's
hopefully
De Niro, and
two great tastes.
George had a comparison before, I will say.
We definitely have.
Firmly in the cheek.
We're early stages of earning it,
Yeah.
Again, if Dan, if you're involved in any kind of production that isn't, if the next thing, if you've got something coming out and it's not necessarily with George, and obviously again, let us know. We'd love to try and take the boots that if we can.
Absolutely.
Both of you, obviously.
Okay.
We crazy artists have to stick together.
It's true.
Oh,
100%.
No, this is absolutely important.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you both very much. And
thank you guys.
Thanks for having us. No, it's great. We have the best fans. We really do. We really do. So I really appreciate it. And from what I'm hearing, you guys have the best fans as well. So I think it's an endless chain.
Oh, excellent!
Just, like amazing
chain of
love.
fans.
Yeah. It's a game of who's the most underrated. In a circle. So
Exactly.
pretty great.
Better be underrated than overrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Well,
I can't wait until I become overrated.
That's right.
I think
Gemma Files. I've just heard so much about her, and I'm so sick of it.
Dan
Oldroyd, come on.
He's a douche.
So, thanks both of you for coming on, George Popov and Daniel Oldroyd. Hope to speak to you again soon. I hope to see more awesome work from yours gracing the screens before much longer.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of No Darkness But Ours. Let us know what you thought, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please feel free to make a donation through our Patreon or Ko-Fi pages. It remains only to thank our special guests, George Popov and Daniel Oldroyd, and hope we've spurred you on to discover more of their work if you hadn't seen it already. Next, Gemma and I will be discussing queer horror in all its forms, and coming soon will be a wealth of new, exclusive content for our subscribers.
Until then, I have been Simon Bestwick.
And I have been Gemma Files.
And this has been, of course, No
Darkness But Ours.